if you're a new shooter or a beginner and you're wondering how to hold your pistol in a ready position, this video is for you. Hi, I'm Miles at Tactical Hyve, and today I want to discuss how to hold your pistol in a ready position so you're ready to fire or engage a threat or targets when you need to. Now, this is not a grip video, so we're not going to be covering how to exactly place your hands on your gun and things like that. This is more about what do you do when you are about to shoot, or let's say you're attending a training class. Let me take out my pistol here so I can show you. I'm dry, so there's nothing in the chamber. This is an empty magazine here. Okay, I'm gonna send the slide forward though. And what I was referring to is you might be taking a class or you might be at a shooting range and you're not shooting. You take out your gun from your holster. Do you just, we see a lot of beginners, especially if they're new shooters or beginners, they're very tense and they don't really know what to do with their gun. They are following the rules, the muzzle is pointed down and their finger's off the trigger, but they're just tense and they don't really know what to do. So I want to discuss some different ways you can hold your pistol in a ready position. Okay, so you're at the range, or you're in a class outdoor range and you're ready to shoot. So you don't want to just be holding your gun like this. This is a safe direction, that's good, and your finger's off the trigger, that's great. But let's say you are going to engage a threat, or this is a defensive situation where your gun has to be in a ready position. So I'm going to discuss some common ready positions for you. At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong way because it's going to depend on the situation. And even, for example, if you belong to a unit, law enforcement, military, they have different ways of doing things and they might have to follow their own procedures. But that said, I'm going to discuss some of the pros and cons to different positions and then you can try them out. So the first one is considered low ready. So you approach the line at a range or at a class, or you hear that bump in the night, you're going to hear some people teach a low ready where you have your grip on your pistol and your gun is down this way, just like this, okay? And when you're about to engage a target, you raise your gun up to your eyes and then you would engage your targets. So this is referred to as the low ready. Now there are some pros and cons. I'm not going to go over every little thing, but some of the wave tops here. So one of the advantages here is clearly your muzzle, your gun is down in a safe direction, right? So there's very little chance that if someone popped out, you're going to shoot them, because if you had a compressed ready here with your muzzle forward and someone surprises you, you might pull that trigger. Whereas here, there's a lot more time, and if you do get surprised, you may shoot the ground, right? And there's time that needed for you to bring that gun up, okay? So the low ready does have a safe, it is relatively safe here, but there are some disadvantages that a lot of people talk about. And that is possibly in a close quarters environment, if your threat is nearby, they can stuff you. So if you want to engage that threat and you bring your gun up, if they're close, they can stuff your presentation. They can stuff you from raising that gun up, and then it can cause complications, right? But this is one method that is used, and you can see this a lot with law enforcement. You'll see them even in videos, real life videos, they are at a low ready, okay? Once again, pros and cons. Another disadvantage that's talked about is if you live in a high rise or condo and there's somebody beneath you, you possibly can, if there's an accidental discharge, you could shoot the floor and it might go through. You never know. So that is something that's discussed as well with the low ready, okay? Now let's move on to another ready position that's referred to the high ready, okay? The opposite. So the high ready position, it is the opposite of low ready, and I'm going to have my muzzle of my pistol facing upwards. Typically, the front sight or the end of the muzzle here, okay, particularly, let's say you had a red dot, is going to be aligned with my eyes here. I don't want to cover my eyes like this. It's just going to be lined here. I can still see everything that I want to here. I can look left and right, and my muzzle is in a safe direction. In all these ready positions, my finger is going to be off the trigger, of course, okay? So I'm here, and I still can see everything. I'm in a safe position. There are advantages and disadvantages as well with this, okay? So the ready position is more of a natural fighting posture. So this is one of the advantages people like it. They naturally get in a stance like this. It feels good to them here, okay? Here, you can also strike. So if someone is up close and they're not a threat, you can hit them with a muzzle here. And it can be very devastating because, this is a very hard object, and if you nail them right, it can do some damage. So here, this is very powerful position to be in, and it's a natural fighting stance. Just like the low ready position, there are disadvantages in the sense that, for example, I have this muzzle pointing up, but what if I live in a high rise and I shoot up? I could potentially hit a neighbor who lives above me. But you'll notice that with all these ready positions, there is always going to be a possibility that you might shoot someone, even if your muzzle is in a safe direction. Because again, that high rise, there's someone up top, there's someone down low, so you just have to consider that stuff, okay? And this is why there's not necessarily a right or wrong way. Notice that if you've been in the shooting industry for a while, a lot of people always look for a black and white answer. They always like, what technique is the best? But the truth is, it's situation dependent. So as we can tell, if you didn't want to accidentally shoot somebody, if you lived in a high rise and you were on the first floor, well then this is completely safe, right? Because you're not going to shoot anyone below you. But now if you did a high ready like this, then you might shoot someone, okay? So situation dependent here. Now going back to the high ready, we already talked about some of the advantages, the natural fighting stance, you can push out and use this as a weapon, and the disadvantage here is you could potentially shoot someone at up top. Another disadvantage that you might hear a few people talk about, which I believe more is a matter of training, but you'll hear some people say that compared to the low ready, where if a threat comes out, there's more time for you to positively identify that threat before presenting your gun. So there's less chance of an accidental discharge. Whereas with the high ready, you don't have as much time. So if someone pops out, you might present and you might take that accidental shot. But like I mentioned, I feel that is more of a matter of training, right? So there is still time. If someone popped out and you possibly ID them with your eyes, then it's going to be safe. But again, take that for what it's worth. There's a minority who will talk about that as a disadvantage of the high ready. A third ready position that you'll see a lot in classes and probably in defensive situations if you see military or cops is the compressed ready position. Now there are variations of this, so I'm just going to discuss kind of the general idea of all the different variations, but you will see that instead of this, a high ready or a low ready, okay, that gun is going to be compressed close to your chest. And there are variations that I talked about. You might have the muzzle pointing straight. You might do something called a swivel position where the gun is down, just like this here, but it's still compressed, okay? And then you might have variations of this where someone might hold the muzzle here too. Instead of this, they might hold this, okay? The main difference here between the high ready and the low ready is it's compressed and it's in close. This is something that you will see, as I mentioned, in classes. And the advantage of this here is you can take contact shots. What I mean by a contact shot, if someone was very close to you, okay? Your gun is still pointed downrange in this particular variation here. If you did the swivel position, you could also just twist here and you easily get shots off too. You're not trying to nail shots far away. This is if someone surprised you, they were up close, you can still break those shots. And you could also, as you're breaking those shots at someone who's very close to you, you can start pushing out and get to your sights if needed, okay? So this compressed ready position, there are disadvantages depending on the variation that you use. As we discussed, like for example, this one right here, if you use the swivel, if you lived in a high rise again, you could potentially shoot someone, have an accidental discharge on the floor below you, okay? Going back to what I mentioned, all of these ready positions, you could really go down the rabbit hole and go, that muzzle is pointing in an unsafe direction. Even if it was the high ready, and we're outdoors, yes, there's a chance I might not immediately shoot someone, but if I have an accidental discharge, we can go down the rabbit hole, that bullet going into the sky and possibly falling down on someone, right? So let's not go there, okay? So each of these positions will have their pros and cons, but this is something that you are going to see common, particularly after someone engages, they might bring that gun here, okay, instead of the high ready, just in case they need to take more shots. All three methods are very common and you'll see them. So experiment with all three, and as we talked about, you might use all three depending on the situation. Now there's a fourth ready position that I want to discuss as well, which is common, but you will hardly see this, you're not going to see this a lot on the range, let's say if you were taking a class, and that is the temple index here. There's a lot of debate over this, but you're going to see this a lot with law enforcement and different units and things like that. But this temple index is, you're keeping this gun up to the sky, so there's no threat of me muzzling anyone in front of me here, okay? And then the idea is if there was a threat, then you're going to establish your grip, push out, and take those shots, okay? There are disadvantages here though. Once again, we go down the rabbit hole, muzzles here, I can shoot somebody up in the second floor, in the floor above me. And here, a disadvantage that a lot of people talk about, this is not a position of strength where someone could rip the gun out here. Let's say if I was in a crowded area, had my gun up, yes, I am safe, I'm not shooting anyone, but potentially if someone knocks me over or my arm gets caught in something, I could lose my pistol. So there are some disadvantages here with this that people will debate over on and on, okay? But again, this video here is just to kind of give you some wave top pros and cons and then experiment with it, okay? The advantage here, completely out of the area, and I'm not muzzling anyone out at all, okay? With this, I already talked about, this is not something that you're typically going to see in classes though, right? So if you're at the line, and let's say there are targets downrange, we're shooting here. At that point, typically people are gonna do this, the low ready, or after they're shooting, they're gonna bring the gun to the high ready, or you'll see them to the compressed ready. You will hardly ever see anyone shoot, and then do this. Typically, because this is when people are running around in a crowd, they gotta get this gun up. And with that said, the people who don't like the temple index, some of them will say you can do that, the Sewell position or a modified Sewell position where that muzzle is pointed down and you have positive control of this pistol, where it's very hard to rip this pistol out of my hands. Whereas with this, if it's here, the gun can be ripped out of my hands. This is not a position of strength. Also, depending on where this gun is, I might be blocking my vision as well. Here I have complete vision, I can see everything, whereas depending on where this gun is, I'm blocking part of it. So there you guys have it, how to hold your pistol in a ready position in between engagements, or if you're in a class in between firing, drills and exercises. This way, you're not kind of caught in limbo and stress, like where your gun is pointing or what to do with it. Particularly for beginners, it is kind of amusing, but we've all been there where they're at the line and you can tell who's new. They don't really know what to do with their gun. So this is what you want to do, get in a ready position. Now there will be variations as I talked about, but those are 4 major ones that you're going to see at ranges or in classes. Keep in mind, neither one of those is right or wrong. It's going to be situation dependent, but you are going to hear people talk a lot about the pros and cons, and take it for what it's worth and use whatever is most comfortable for you. If you guys liked the video, please like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next video.